Hello, 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 and good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this morning. I almost said tonight. This morning, we have two titans in the kidney advocacy community with us, Elaine Perlman and Ned Brooks, who will talk to us about the End Kidney Deaths Act. The act will provide all non-directed living kidney donors, those who give their kidneys to strangers, with a $50,000 refundable federal tax credit. The tax credit will be uniformly provided over a period of 5 years in the amount of $10,000 per year. The End Kidney Death Act was created in response to the inability of the current system to end the shortage of kidney transplants for those who are suffering from kidney failure in the United States. The current system of deceased donations and voluntary living donation is grossly inadequate. 42,000 patients are added to the wait list every year, healthy enough to receive a kidney transplant, but the waiting time for a kidney kills many of them. The shortage of transplant kidneys results in 12,000 patients on the kidney wait list every year, either dying or getting removed from the wait list because they waited so long, their health deteriorated, and they're no longer healthy enough to get transplanted. When these 12,000 Americans first waitlisted, they were healthy enough to be saved by a kidney transplant, but the waiting time killed them. We have approximately 90,000 people on the kidney transplant waiting list and around 26,000 transplants per year. That is a success rate of less than 30%. In your Uncle Jim's opinion, that's abysmal. We can do better, and the End Kidney Deaths Act will get us there. Our guests, ladies first. Elaine Perlman is making her second appearance on the broadcast. She herself was a living kidney donor who launched a chain of kidney donations. Elaine is an educator who taught elementary, middle, and high school students. More recently, she was a Columbia University professor for 6 years and is now the director of Waitlist Zero, an organization dedicated to providing a kidney transplant for all who need them. She is also a kidney donor mentor with the National Kidney Donation Organization. She has her own website at ELAINEPERLMAN.com. She has her own YouTube channel and helps to coordinate the One Kidney Clubs. She is the author of Be the Parent You Wish You Had, and there's a better than average chance that you've seen her videos on TikTok, at least her recent ones, which are excellent, by the way. And just so you know, folks, if you go to the my page on Facebook, the original broadcast is pinned to the top of the page. In the comments, there's all kinds of links that both Elaine and Ned are responsible for. And if you want to drill down a little bit on our guests, that information is there for you to look at. I am very, can't understate this enough, very excited to have the great Edwin Ned Brooks on the broadcast this morning. He is a living kidney donor as well as the founder and chairman of the National Kidney Donation Organization. The nkdo.org is where you can find him. He is the president of the Coalition to Modify NOTA, capital N-O-T-A. That website, modifiednota.org. This is the group that created and is advocating for the End of Kidney Deaths Act. He is an op-ed writer. Check out his article in the LA Times, and the link for that will appear during the broadcast. It's also in the comments to my original notice of the broadcast, so you can check it out there. He is a kidney donor himself. He is a graduate from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. In the kidney advocacy world, he is a force to be reckoned with. Please give a warm welcome both to Elaine Perlman and Ned Brooks. How are you guys doing this morning?
Well, much better after that introduction, I can tell you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Uncle Jim.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Elaine and Ned, did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
Yes, I'd just like you to repeat it in front of my children at some point.
Absolutely. Our friend Donna Tissot is watching. Hi, Donna. How are you? Ned, please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education and employment experiences.
Sure. I grew up in Connecticut and New York City, went to college up in New Hampshire, graduated in '72, went over to Japan working for American Express over there for 6 years, came back, as you noted, to go to the Tuck Business School at Dartmouth, and then had a career in financial services for 25 years or so, and a concurrent career in real estate development. Did all that up till about 2012 or so, retired, and then started the second chapter of my life, which is what I'm doing now.
Great, great. Thank you, Ned. Elaine, same question. Please tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your employment experiences.
Thank you, Uncle Jim. Yeah, I grew up in a place called Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's in central Pennsylvania, not too far from Harrisburg and Gettysburg, a town of 16,000. I then went on to Wesleyan University, where I studied English and economics. And after that, I became a teacher. I got a master's degree from Columbia University and a school administration degree so I could become a school leader from Shippensburg State University. I was a teacher for 30 years. I taught 2nd through 11th grade, as well as children who are under 5. And as you stated, for the last 6 years, I was a professor and program director of the Peace Corps Fellows Program at Columbia University. Once I started reading about the kidney shortage and I realized it was a solvable problem, I switched gears in 2022, and I'm now advocating full-time for all laws that will dissolve barriers to kidney donation.
Oof. Oof. I understand that both Elaine and Ned, you are both living kidney donors. Ned, tell us a little bit about your experience as a living kidney donor.
Well, I was listening to a podcast with on Freakonomics with Al Roth back in 2015 in the car with my wife, and as I listened to it, it was like a light bulb going off in my head. It became very clear to me that my 2 kidneys were redundant. I only needed one. I could live a perfectly healthy life with just one kidney, and that people who were at end-stage kidney disease and on dialysis were leading a truly horrible existence. And those 2 facts combined made it an imperative in my mind that I needed to donate my kidney. This was in June of 2015, and in September, I donated at Weill Cornell in New York to a stranger. Turned out to be a highly sensitized young mother of 2 small children out in Colorado. So my kidney went from New York to Colorado, and her father's kidney went to Hartford, where the last 2 transplants in the chain took place. And one of the compelling features of this whole process was the idea of leverage, that my one kidney could affect 3 transplants, get 3 people off the wait list. That was a no-brainer for me.
Wow. Elaine, same question. Tell us a little bit about your living kidney donation story.
So when my son was 17, he announced to me that he was donating his kidney to a stranger. He wasn't asking, he was telling me. He told me it's safer than childbirth, and he showed me how life-giving it is to another person and that we don't need the second kidney. I like how Ned said it's redundant. We have one to keep and one to give away. When he was 19, he gave his kidney to a stranger. We live on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. It was a young man who was 21 on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And they met on the set of Good Morning America. 6 months after his donation, I donated, and I was able to launch a kidney chain for 4 people in Oklahoma, Georgia, and Washington State to get new kidneys.
Wow. Wow, what great kidney stories. I want to discuss the issues that led to the creation of the Coalition to Modify NOTA, the National Organ Transplant Act of 1984. First, Ned, please discuss with us, why did you create the coalition?
I started National Kidney Donation Organization in 2016 with the idea that no one can speak to a donor candidate with the same authority as somebody who's actually donated. And that became the operating mantra for NKDO. And quickly gathered a team of living donors, and we became advocates for kidney donation and mentors for candidates who were interested in becoming donors. That was extremely successful. We operate as a contractor to the National Kidney Registry right now at about 60 transplant centers, helping to mentor donor candidates. And last year, we helped facilitate over 700 transplants. That sounds really good until you realize that the number of living donors in this country in 2015 was about 5,900, and in 2023 was about 600 more than that. And with 90,000+ people on the wait list, it is absolutely clear that all the work we are doing, while it's laudable, is not having an effect on the wait list as we had hoped it would do. And I reached the point where I said, this is just not working. And so I got together with Elaine and a few other good folks and started the coalition.
Okay. Ned, let's talk about the current state of the law with regard to compensating kidney donors. What can you tell us about the current state?
The NOTA, or the National Organ Transplant Act of 1984, prohibits compensating donors for their organs. It was introduced by, at that time, Senator Al Gore, and was done so with the best of intentions, because there had been a renegade fellow who was building a business in trafficking in organs, and it was a very sort of a dark period for organ transplant at that point. And so this law was intended to stop that kind of trafficking. Unfortunately, it's had the effect of limiting the ability of people to be compensated in a fair way. And thus, we're in this situation now where, as they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we are in this situation now because we're not thinking outside the box and looking for solutions to this problem.
Right. Elaine, please discuss with us, what are the reasons for the current state of the law that the system requires all deceased and living donations must be completely voluntary without any sort of benefit to the donor? What is the rationale that underlies the current state of the law?
Well, I think it's important to understand that back in 1984, when the NOTA law was written, that organ donation was more dangerous. Now it's safer than childbirth. Back in 1984, organ donation was an open surgery, and now it is laparoscopic. And in truth, an open market for organ sales would be both harmful to the kidney patients and donors. It would be especially harmful to low-income kidney failure patients if we had an open market for kidneys where people, where recipients were paying whatever they could to donors. It would unfairly allow those with a great deal of money from jumping the line to the front of the line and getting a kidney. But the fact is that even in today's world, the wealthiest Americans do have ways of jumping the line. And that is why they are 4 times more likely to get a kidney transplant than low-income people are able to. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Wealthy people can list in multiple transplant centers in multiple states. They can travel to states with lower waiting times. So for example, the waiting time in California is up to 10 years. And when we think about it, half of those on dialysis die within the first 5 years. So that 10-year wait time is just a death sentence for so many Californians. So a wealthy Californian could perhaps join a wait list in a state like Nebraska. That is one of the states with the shortest waiting times. They would need to be fully tested at each hospital and ready to fly out to whatever center they're listed in. And only a wealthy person could pull that off. Wealthy people can also afford billboards or hiring a person to help them run a campaign that may include appearances on television or in other media arenas. It's also a very expensive process for most Americans. For example, my friend Jackie, who I think you know, Uncle Jim, she was told by her husband's transplant center that they would need to raise $25,000 before they could be added to the wait list. So she created a foundation now to help other kidney failure patients' families raise money so they could be able to be added to the kidney wait list, able to save enough money to be added. There are so many financial barriers, and it results in low-income kidney failure patients being much less likely to be transplanted than high-income patients. So at the time, it made sense to shut down the open market, but what we're proposing is a controlled government system of tax credits so that everyone is getting the same amount, and this will disproportionately help low-income and middle-income kidney failure patients get kidneys.
Awesome. Ned, I have read the mission statement to the coalition. Quote, the current system of deceased donors and voluntary living donors is grossly inadequate to the task of ending the shortage of transplant kidneys and saving the lives of patients in kidney failure who are dying unnecessarily each year. What leads you to believe that this statement is true?
Uncle Jim, we have a kidney shortage. The number of living donors for the past 24 years has been about 6,000. 42,000 people are added to the kidney wait list every year. The pool of deceased donors is not adequate and will never be adequate to close that gap. The only way we're going to close the gap is through living donation. There were about 27,000 transplants each year, and two kinds of donors, deceased and living. The problem with deceased donation is that only, depending upon who you listen to, between 1 and 3 in 1,000 die in a way that the organs can be procured. We want every American who needs a life-saving kidney to get one. And right now, there are thousands needlessly suffering and dying from the kidney shortage. I just want to talk about dialysis for a minute. Dialysis is the transition from having a healthy kidney to getting a kidney transplant. The problem is that because of the shortage of kidneys, it's become a permanent state of life for way too many people. If you're on dialysis for 5 years, 35 to 40% of those people are going to be dead after 5 years. Dialysis tries to remove all the toxins in your body the way kidneys do, but it can't do as good a job as kidneys. And so there's a slow accumulation of toxins in all your organs. And at some point, dialysis fails. It's actually worse than that, because while you're on dialysis, vast majority of people are unable to work. And so you are a burden on your family. You are existing but not really living. It's just a horrible way to be. And that's what I think about every day when I think about this kidney shortage.
Okay. Elaine, give us an update. I tried to look up for the numbers, the House resolution, the Senate numbers on the end of Kidney Deaths Act. I couldn't find it. What's the status of the act currently?
Oh, thank you, Jim. Well, since January 3rd, we've had nearly 80 meetings with congressional offices, and we've had a lot of interest. They've been very positive and encouraging meetings. We're on the verge of having the bill introduced in the House. We have interest for people who want to be lead sponsors, and we are working hard to get it introduced in the Senate. So I think very soon we're going to be hearing, you're going to be able to look it up and find the bill number. And I'm really excited about that.
Okay, so we have a Republican sponsor. We're looking for a Democratic sponsor
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right.
Okay. Elaine, in your view and the view of the coalition, the proposed legislation, the End of Kidney Death Act, is a solution to the crisis. If the proposed legislation would become law, please explain what benefits, if any, you would expect to occur.
So we estimate that by year 10 of the End Kidney Death Act, we will have 100,000 new to offer to all Americans who desperately need them in order to have return to a life of vibrancy and longevity. In addition, there will be a $14 billion tax savings by year 10 because, as we know, we are spending 1% of the federal budget on kidney dialysis. It's about $50 billion a year. And so $1 out of every 100 tax dollars goes to paying for dialysis. So moving people off dialysis is incredibly tax saving. And then in terms of what individual patients will experience, I'll give you a few examples. My friend Greg is a medical doctor. He was transplanted last year by a non-directed donor who didn't know him, but heard about him in a prayer group and decided to donate to him. He was near death at the time and going to go to hospice instead of dialysis because he had treated dialysis patients nearly every day of his career and knew how absolutely horrible the experience would be to go on dialysis. So he was getting ready to go to hospice. In the 11th hour, he was saved by a kidney transplant. He is now back to working full time, paying taxes, writing kidneys, and he works regularly in ICU, saving lives.
Okay. Ned is back. Ned, let's discuss for a moment how badly the current transportation system is failing. Can we agree that the gold standard of kidney care is living kidney donation?
Yes, Jim, living kidney transplants last twice as long as deceased donor transplants. A living donor transplant lasts on average 15 to 20 years. There are about 550,000 people on dialysis, and this costs the taxpayer an average per person close to $50 billion on end-stage kidney disease, or about 1% of the entire federal budget. The developments now in kidney research are changing the way those numbers are going to work. They're getting better and better at being able to deal with rejection, and some of the tests that they've got now should allow donors from kidneys from living donors to last possibly the entire lifetime of the recipient. It's a very exciting development.
Okay. Ned, I read your op-ed, your statement in the LA Times article that you co-authored. In the 40 years since the National Organ Transplant Act of 1984 came into existence, nearly 40 years ago, you wrote, "The law is responsible for millions of needless deaths and trillions of wasted dollars." I read in your article that Medicare spends as much as $136 billion with a B, or nearly 25% of its expenditures on care for people with kidney disease, according to the National Kidney Foundation, which is on a par with the entire budget for the United States Marine Corps. Can you comment on the current costs of the current kidney donation system?
Well, Jim, I have to say that comparison with the budget for the U.S. Marine Corps is not one that I had seen before, and that's a very powerful comparison. The costs are, as you say, the human costs, as I mentioned before, with dialysis patients is just massive. They have 4 times the depression rate as a general population, and they're unable to work for the most part. This is this is a national tragedy that really is just so far below the radar. I have a shirt, and Elaine has billboards she walks around in. I have a shirt that says, consider living kidney donation. And I wear it when I go to the gym or other places like that, just to try to get some awareness going on. Very, very seldom does anyone come up to me to talk about it who does not have some experience with kidney failure, kidney disease. But boy, if they have kidney failure, kidney disease, or if they're a donor, they come to me like a magnet. It's really quite extraordinary. I'm going to turn you over to Elaine now because there's somebody at my door and I've got to mute this. Go ahead.
Okay. Elaine, I read a result of this shortage that 12,000 Americans were first waitlisted and healthy enough to be saved by a kidney transplant, but the waiting time killed them. Can you please explain?
Sure, Jim. Well, every day between 13 and 14 people are unfortunately dying directly from the wait list. And then we have, thousands of others who are removed because they become too sick to be transplanted. Now, keep in mind, when those people joined the transplant list, they all had thorough testing and they were healthy enough to receive a kidney. So if we had no kidney shortage, all of those people, the 12,000 that die every year, would have been saved, right? So the crisis is tremendously painful. And, as Ned said, the rates of depression in dialysis clinics, because people are just waiting, knowing that they're unlikely to ever get the call that a kidney is ready for them, and that their life is about to change dramatically. So yeah, this is a solvable problem, Jim. All we need to do is provide a refundable tax credit. We use refundable tax credits to shape behavior. That has a long history. It's very American. I like to joke around that it's American as apple pie. We give tax credits to people because we want them to have children. We want them to be homeowners. We're giving tax credits to people right now, a $7,500 tax credit for anyone who buys a certain kind of electric car. And shaping behavior is something that the tax code does. There's no better behavior than giving your kidney to a stranger, I think, in terms of the life it gives that recipient, the comfort it gives the family, as well as the tax saving for us taxpayers. I think it's a win across the board.
Okay, you sent me some numbers, Elaine. Around 26,000 kidney transplants occur each year from a wait list of about 90,000 people waiting for a kidney transplant. The conversion rate is less than a 30% success rate. Our business guy, Ned, can tell you that's pretty poor. And 42,000 patients are added to the wait list every year. How does the act relieve this problem?
The act will simply provide more kidneys, right? So we will be able to have far more kidney surgeries and added 10,000 per year. So we currently have 26,000. Well, it'll become 36,000. And keep in mind that living kidneys last twice as long as deceased donor kidneys. So it's like a 2-for-1 special, right? We get more life out of a living kidney than we do out of a deceased kidney. So those kidneys will last longer and hopefully for a patient's entire lifetime.
So, Elaine, every time an American gets a transplant, recipients survive and American taxpayers save money. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Recipients don't only survive, they thrive. So, for example, my friend Jeff, he was on the verge of death and is now on a ski vacation right now with his family. He was just transplanted last year. My son's recipient, his skin was gray. His father told me he was on the verge of death. He got a 19-year-old kidney into his 21-year-old body. It's 4 years later. He has now finished college and is enjoying being a new father. So it's not only survival, it's an ability to really thrive and live large. And that's what we want for every kidney failure patient who is healthy enough to be transplanted.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Ned, as the coalition's website points out, over the last 20 years, the number of living kidney donors has stayed the same, while the number of Americans on the kidney wait list has doubled. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, it is. And as I alluded to earlier, That is the very definition of insanity, our policy in this regard, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. We're losing this battle. It's only going to get worse. There are just more people being added to the list every year than there are kidneys available. It's just that simple.
I noted that in your article that the need rises by 8% every year for people that need a kidney donation. Is it true that experts predict that by the year 2030, 1 million Americans will suffer from kidney failure? And
can you imagine what that will do to Medicare? Talk about blowing holes in budgets. This economy cannot afford that. This is bankrupting us right now. And it's just going to get worse and worse as time goes on if we don't deal with it.
And I want to add something to that, if that's okay, Uncle Jim.
Yeah.
We have a situation, part of the reason we have the kidney shortage is that so few people are healthy enough to become kidney donors. And so I was on a call last week with a family, the Collins family. They are a Gold Star family. Their son tragically was killed in Iraq, and their daughter is dying from kidney disease. 23 people have come forward to donate to her. None of them were healthy enough. I was listening to a doctor speak. He said 6 people came forward for one of his patients to donate to him. None of them were healthy enough, and one of them actually needed a kidney. So we have a situation in the United States where we're going from 800,000 to 1 million kidney failure patients. We are getting less and less healthy. That means that fewer and fewer Americans would be able to be healthy enough to donate. And so I think that brings up the urgency to begin incentivizing so we can save those patients. You know, we have 40 million Americans with diabetes, 90 million with pre-diabetes. None of them would be able to be healthy enough to donate their kidneys, right? So as the problem worsens, it makes it more urgent that we need to incentivize people to step forward and save the lives of fellow Americans.
Elaine, I want to ask you about some other proposed solutions to the shortage of kidney transplants, like xenotransplantation or the artificial kidney. In terms of their immediate impact and effect, please compare that to the end of Kidney Deaths Act, the immediate impact there.
Well, the xenotransplant and the artificial kidney are many, many years away. And until they are in good form and ready to be transplanted into people with kidney failure, thousands of people will die. Now, it's important to note that the person who wrote the National Organ Transplant Act, he was working for Al Gore at the time. His name is Jerry Mand. He told me in a conversation I had with him a couple months ago that in 1984, when he wrote NOTA, scientists were promising that pig kidneys or artificial kidneys were just around the corner. And it's now 40 years later, and we are still years away from those innovations from actually becoming reality. I think that it's wishful thinking to think that it is going to happen any day soon. We're still decades away from it, I would predict. And when it's even ready, when the pig kidney or the digital kidney is ready to be transplanted, it will never be as good as a long-lasting human living kidney transplant. We have the cure. We have the solution for those who are suffering from kidney failure. They last, as I said, twice as long as deceased donor kidneys, and they each have 1 million nephrons in them. They're very complex, and they are very hard to replace. And yet we have within all of us 2 kidneys, and if we're healthy enough, we have 1 to give away. And the issue with kidneys is that they work diligently until they often fail, and people often don't find out until they are on emergency dialysis in the ER that they even have kidney issues. So we are in a situation where we have the solution, a living human kidney transplant, gold standard of kidney care. The xeno and the artificial kidneys, I hope one day that they will be really great solutions and we can provide them for everyone who needs them. But in the meantime, I just am heartbroken that we have thousands of people dying every year, and they could be saved if we would just get around to incentivizing people to give their kidneys to strangers.
Awesome. Ned, I am referring back again to your article your op-ed in the LA Times. And folks, if you want to read that op-ed, the link to it again is, if you go to the original notice of the broadcast on my personal Facebook page, it's in the comments. It's worth the read. It is entirely brilliant. The op-ed, it stated that you expected that if a law like the ENDS Act were passed, it could save up to 100,000 lives immediately. How did you arrive at that number?
Well, we surveyed transplant centers about how much they could ramp up their number of kidney transplant surgeries. And we believe that about 10,000 additional transplants could be done each year. That's why we state by year 10 of the End Kidney Deaths Act, we'll have 100,000 new kidneys to offer those who will die without them. So I guess the 100,000 lives immediately may be a little bit of an overstatement. The 50,000 in compensation comes from two sources. Dr. Thomas Peters, an eminent transplant surgeon, conducted a research study that was published in 2016. And he found that a $50,000 incentive made people 60% more likely to make the decision to donate. In addition, a 2019 paper stated that there were roughly $40,000 in donor disincentives. That's $50,000 in 2024 dollars. So we feel that $50,000 is a fair amount to provide donors, even though their kidney is worth far more than that. One aspect of this I just want to clarify for everyone is the concept of a refundable tax credit. $10,000 a year over 5 years would go towards reducing the taxes for those who make enough money to have that be effective for them. If people who are donors do not make enough money to benefit from that, the Treasury will write them a check for $10,000. So the net effect is the same for both those who are making a lot of money and those who are not making a lot of money.
Wow. Elaine, let's talk for a minute about one of the big concerns about the act. I hear from opponents that there are no safeguards to prevent individuals from being exploited. How do you respond to those concerns?
So the definition of exploitation is when people are paid different amounts for the same good, or they're not paid at all for the good. A living kidney is a very valuable thing. I was on a call with a transplant surgeon from the University of Iowa who said, in reality, it's worth $250,000 to the system. But in our case, we're going to be providing the $50,000 refundable tax credit to all people who give kidneys to strangers. This is, we believe, a fair amount that will incentivize people. You know, when people donate their kidneys, it costs them nothing in medical costs, but there are other costs involved. And about 50% of donors are currently reimbursed for all of those costs, but they run to be about 10% of a person's annual salary. They include travel costs, possibly hotel stays for their caregivers or for themselves when they're testing, as well as lost wages. So this is very far from anything that could be described as exploitative. Instead, it is very fair. For example, I have a friend named Lucy. She gave her kidney to a stranger. She waited 8 years to be able to give her kidney to a stranger because she wanted to get herself into a financially good enough place that she could afford to donate. If the End Kidney Deaths Act was in place, she could have donated that first year. And as we know, the younger the kidney, the better. So she was able to donate a kidney that was 8 years older. She could have donated in that first year and provided a younger kidney to her recipient. So everybody wins when a donor is able to financially afford to donate. And as we know, incentives and the tax credit system is used to help people to sway them so they will make a decision that is a good one and helpful for the greater good.
I have a recollection, Elaine, of a study that was done by Weightless Zero and talking about the costs to a kidney donor in New York. Can you comment on that for us?
Yeah, so in 2022, we were really excited. A waitlist zero law passed in New York State. It was a unanimous vote, and then it was signed by the governor to be able to fully reimburse every New York donor who gives to a New York recipient. And we found that, yes, donor costs get very high very quickly. If you consider that somebody who is perhaps a physical worker or an hourly employee, they may lose up to 6 weeks in lost wages in order to be able to donate, because you cannot lift anything heavy in the first 6 weeks. It can become very expensive. And that's why currently most donors are middle or high income. Low income donors frequently, unless they work for something like the federal government or some state governments, and they'll get fully reimbursed for their time off, they are taking a financial loss when they donate. However, I do want to emphasize that, as I said earlier, 50% of donors are fully reimbursed by both private and public organizations. And yet we do not have an increase in the number of donors. We still have that consistent 6,000 every year. I think there's a lot of belief by a lot of different people in the organ transplant world that if people are cost neutral at the end of donation, that it will incentivize people to donate. Found that that is unfortunately not the case. We really need to move into the incentivizing donors in order to be able to provide far more kidney transplants for those who are dying without them.
Others have stated in the past that if we start paying donors for their kidneys, only the rich will be recipients. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's a very odd, and it's no whoever thinks that is not aware of how the current system is running. When donors are incentivized to give their kidneys to strangers, the people on the wait list will be given those kidneys. And the people on the wait list are 4 times more likely to be middle and low income Americans. As I said earlier, wealthier Americans, they tend to have abilities to get, to pay someone to help them run a campaign, to have the billboards. And they also tend to have healthier social networks. And so therefore, more people who can cross that threshold and be deemed healthy enough to donate a kidney. Low income people tend to have lower social networks that are comprised of people with worse health outcomes than wealthy people. So right now, the current system is far better for the wealthy. Once we incentivize donation, we'll even the playing field and be able to provide kidneys to those who've been waiting on the wait list the longest.
So what you're saying, Elaine, is currently we already have a system where the rich have advantages over poor people or average people.
Exactly. And by providing the incentive that will help the people who are on the wait list, those are primarily low-income people, will be in a far more even and fair system of organ allocation.
Okay. Ned and Elaine, let's talk about safeguards that are built into the ENDS Act. Ned, please tell us about the ethical safeguards, strict eligibility criteria.
Well, eligibility, privacy, confidentiality, these are all very, very important issues. And the reality is that the transplant centers do a good job of this with what they have structured in their system right now. When somebody goes to a transplant center with interest in becoming a donor, they are contacted by someone called an independent living donor advocate, or ILDA. And that person operates as the advocate for the donor candidate in terms of that candidate's interactions with the staff and doctors at the transplant center. In addition, the candidate meets with a social worker to determine the ability to take care of themselves both before and after the operation, and whether they have the financial means to do so, as well as what the social network that they have looks like. They meet with a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They go through a very comprehensive battery of tests. All of these are designed to weed out those people who are both physically not appropriate for donation, and also those who psychologically may not be appropriate. I don't see anything in that process that needs to change with what we're proposing.
Okay. Ned, discuss the importance of the informed consent system.
Yes, informed consent is very, very important. It requires that the candidate be aware of all the relevant aspects of the operation, both in terms of the physical and the psychological impact this may have. An example of this is the question that every candidate is asked, which is, how would you feel if your kidney were to fail after going into your recipient? How would you react to that? And I've talked to any number of people who've been disqualified from being donors because their reaction was, I would be devastated. I would just be, I would feel horrible about it. And depending upon how that's interpreted by the psychiatrist, they may feel that individual is not a suitable candidate. In my case, I answered that question that I would be very upset, but the fact that I had helped do a chain of 3 people, and therefore I would take some solace in the knowledge that two others are successfully transplanted. That was satisfactory for me. I don't want to dwell on that, but there are other aspects of the informed consent system that are very, very important, and there's a long list of checkpoints that the transplant center has to go through with the candidate.
Elaine, talk to us about the safeguards against coercion.
Yeah, so the choice to become a kidney donor is a choice, right? And so there's no sense of coercion at all. And the definition of coercion is using force or threats to persuade someone to do something. In this case, it would just make it easier for someone to be able to donate, because they would be able to afford to donate, as well as perhaps use the funds for tuition or to do home repairs or something that would just help make their life a bit better. As I said earlier, we are offering the tax credit to incentivize people to do what is right. And in terms of coercion, it is something where someone can look at this as an opportunity and say, hey, I really do want to help another person have a far better life. And the tax credit has given me the awareness that this is something that I can afford to do. So we just believe that the tax credit will make things easier for people to donate, and that's our aim.
Okay. Elaine, talk to us a little bit about the privacy and confidentiality rights of donors and how it will be accomplished.
We uphold patients' privacy and confidentiality currently throughout the donation process. If someone, for example, is testing to be a donor, then the recipient perhaps is told only the number of people are being tested, but they are not aware of their identity or their background. It is simply a confidential piece of news that is not shared with the recipient. The transplant centers do a really good job of making sure that donors are the decision makers and that they're in the driver's seat throughout the donation process. All donors are asked if we want to continue with it. It's the transplant center is very aware that this is a gift and it's not a requirement. And so throughout the process, they assure us that if we want to change our minds, they will absolutely respect that with absolutely no negativity or judgment associated with it. And even in the operating room, all donors are asked, do you want to do this? You do not have to do this. Are you willing? Is this something you want to do? So along with the privacy and confidentiality that is I think with all medical care, it's required by law. It's something where the decision is really the donors throughout the process, even until the day of the operation.
Ned, please talk to us about the Act protections and standards, including donor protection measures, medical screening and evaluation, and post-donation care.
You know, Jim, I'm going to toss that over to Elaine because she's the one who's been having the conversations with the legislators. I'm not sure that we're far enough along in the discussions to address that, other than to say that there are all those aspects of medical screening, evaluation, post-donation care are part of the current practice. So I'm not sure that there's anything more that's needed here. Elaine, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's right. We have this full battery of tests that Ned described earlier, both psychological evaluations and full physical evaluation screenings. They make sure the transplant centers do such a good job of making sure that donors are in top health, that they will not at all be harmed by having one kidney, that they are not likely to ever develop any kind of chronic disease. And they do such an excellent job that donors live longer than the general population. And I know so many donors that after donating became even more healthy because they became aware that, you know, with one kidney, they want to make sure they treat that kidney with the ultimate care, as well as the rest of their organs. And then post-care, if there are any issues that come up that are directly related to the donation, that is covered under the recipient's insurance, which tends to be Medicare, which is paid for by taxpayers. When someone gets a workup to become a kidney donor, they call it the $1 million workup. They examine absolutely everything within our bodies. And so the evaluation is very thorough. The post-donation care is in place, and donors are very much protected.
Elaine, talk to us about the importance of public education, including educational campaigns, community collaboration, and culturally competent care.
So after the bill passes, we will work tirelessly to educate people about the opportunity to donate and receive the refundable tax credit. And this will be conducted by organizations throughout the country. I also imagine that people will write books, you know, how to get healthy enough to pass the transplant center screening. I think it will become a much more well-known and popular option for people who really want to save lives. And of course, everyone will benefit when we have far more kidneys in the system.
Ned, talk to us about regulatory oversight in terms of collaboration with the IRS, a Kidney Donor Compensation and Protection Agency, and coordination with the kidney exchange networks.
Jim, that is a prospect of bureaucratic overload. I think all those things you're talking about are unnecessary because all you would need to do is to add perhaps a box onto the tax return. A Kidney Donor Compensation Protection Agency, I don't see that as necessary. I think it simply becomes yet another rule with the IRS about a tax credit. Very straightforward. Coordination with kidney exchange networks, I don't see anything necessary there. The donor candidates would go through the transplant system just as they do now. And there would be one more step for qualification for the tax credit by virtue of donating to a stranger. It's very straightforward to me.
Okay. Ed and Elaine and Ned, please tell us, what are the next steps for the End Kidney Deaths Act? Where do we go from here?
So we are a growing community. So if someone is interested in joining us, they can go to modifynota.org or endkidneydeaths.org and sign our mission statement and join our team. We meet monthly to speak about our progress and strategize on how to move forward. We are very much an active community, and community members are contacting their congressional members to make meetings with them and speak about the benefits of the End Kidney Deaths Act. We are meeting every day with different congressional offices. It is very exciting because we're having an overwhelmingly positive response in those meetings. And so our aim is to pass this law in 2024. You know, many laws take many years to pass. This one, I think, is such a winner. It's a unicorn in that it saves both lives and tax money, that I think it is going to move forward at a rapid pace. And we're planning on getting this done in 2024 because those who are waiting on the wait list have no time to waste. They need for this law to be passed so that we can have so many more kidneys available for them to be able to benefit from a kidney transplant.
Okay, time for final statements. Ladies first. Elaine, do you have any final statements you would like to make to our audience before we conclude the broadcast today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Uncle Jim. I feel so honored to have been on your program twice. It is it's an incredible opportunity to share ideas and educate the public about this crisis, which so many people are not aware of until it hits them or their loved ones. And so I guess my final statement is that a kidney transplant is a life-saving medication. We would never want any American to be denied a life-saving medication. And that is why we need to pass the End Kidney Deaths Act so that far more Americans, 100,000 more Americans. I saw this picture of a Michigan football stadium with 100,000 people in it. It gave me a sense for how many people will be saved by this law, as well as their families. When a person becomes sick in a family, the entire family becomes heartsick. And when someone is transplanted, people get their lives back. Everyone can return to just enjoying all the daily great stuff that life offers. Getting untethered from that dialysis machine is a gift that I want every American who's healthy enough to get transplanted to enjoy. I've had the opportunity to meet so many people who are on dialysis and suffering, people young and up there in years. All of them look at me with eyes that make me feel like it's so bad that I don't have more kidneys to be able to give them, because I would go through that transplant surgery, donor surgery, as many times as needed if I had extra kidneys. I do not, and that's exactly why I'm doing this work. I really hope everybody who's listening will help us pass the End Kidney Deaths Act. And thank you so much again for the opportunity to speak about this life-saving issue.
Miss Elaine, your enthusiasm is contagious.
Thank you.
Ned, do you have any final statements that you would like to make to our audience before we conclude the broadcast today?
Well, I think listening to Elaine, one appreciates the extent to which she is a force of nature, and we are all so grateful to have her on our side. Yeah, the last statement I'd like to make is that if you go to our website, modifynota.org, and look at the supporters page, you will see some of the leading lights in transplant who have signed our mission statement. This says a lot. What it says is that these are professionals who've been in the industry all their life, and they recognize that the system has failed. The system has failed, and we need a new solution. And these folks are coming forward and agreeing with us that we need to be able to compensate donors to eliminate this crisis. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. What a wonderful broadcast. What a great job the two of you have done so early in the morning, getting Uncle Jim up. Just a terrific explanation. And I think that we probably raised a little awareness today, and that we educated some people. And that is the purpose of this broadcast day in and day out. And I'm so proud to have offered this testimony to our audience. And I thank you very, very much for taking the time to come on and talk to all of us about this law, and what great enthusiasm you both have for such a noble end. I'm going to let you guys go. I have a little bit of some things I have to button up with my audience so I can say goodbye. But I do want to thank you again for coming on and discussing this groundbreaking potential legal situation with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
You guys have a good day. All right, that's our broadcast for today. I will be sharing the instant replay on the broadcast almost as soon as the broadcast concludes. So if you missed this morning and you're used to seeing us at night, you'll be able to catch the replay this evening well before the normal 7 o'clock start time. So I want to thank everybody for watching, and I'll be in Washington, D.C. next week with the National Kidney Foundation and broadcast on Friday. So we'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.